speaker most certainly does not need an introduction by me or anyone. Doug Casey is well known and well loved in this room. Although there may be a few haters outside these walls, we don't know. Maybe that's why they put the blinds down. We've all been affected in a positive way by having known or listened to Doug's works. And mine came 25 years ago, fresh out of university, into a new mining job, stuck at a mining dinner where Mr. Casey started pummeling me with questions. And I thought, well, this is a strange way of having a conversation. It felt more like a survey I was taking. But at the end of it, he said, it turns out, Bryce, that you are a libertarian. And that opened an entire new world to me, because I said, what is a libertarian? I thought I was smart. I just came out of school, Bachelor of Science. And since that time, 25 years later, I've met all of these people, and it's opened up my entire world. I also stayed in mining, where he was kind enough to teach me and many others the underside and the underbelly of how the mining industry actually works. And this is timed well with a book that he has just published this week that's for sale called The Speculator. And I'm still in the speculation game, and I've read the book. It's absolutely fantastic. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Mr. Casey. I'm not saying I agree with everything that he says, including this next speech. But
Thanks. Let me start with profuse apologies for. I went on an ill-conceived mining tour to Alaska and caught a terrible bug up there, and basically been in bed for the last 3 days. Haven't even eaten for the last 3 days. So I'm a little under the weather. That's not your problem. Your problem, as far as the next hour is concerned, is that I haven't had the time or the ability to properly research and put together everything that I'm going to say to you. Not that it needed everything. There's no limit to the amount of research that you can do on something. And I've thought about this subject for many years, but this is basically off the top of my head. So my basic presentation is going to be on the short side, and perhaps we can draw this out to with questions and answers after I make a few opening remarks, a little bit disjointed. Anyway, apology in advance. So what I want to do is I want to debunk the concept of charity. Charity is one of those things, there are a number of others, that people just automatically accept as a good thing. How can you be against charity? I mean, it's the principal virtue, the primary virtue. The church, or Christianity, I guess, says there are 3 cardinal virtues. There are other virtues, but they're faith, hope, and charity. And St. Paul says, but the greatest of these is charity. Faith. I mean, what is that? That's believing in the unbelievable. It's not a virtue, it's a vice. It's intellectually and psychologically corrupting to believe in faith as a virtue. And hope. I mean, what is that? That's a virtue to people like Obama. It's the belief that magic will somehow save you. It's ridiculous to phrase hope as a virtue. It's a character flaw, if nothing else. But worst of these is actually charity. Now, what is charity? Well, let's look at the word virtue for a minute. Let me think about that. Where does that word come from? It comes from the Latin virs, which means man. So a virtuous man was not like a humble, shambling Mother Teresa type. I don't see her as the apogee of virtue at all, Mother Teresa, just the opposite. I think Christopher Hitchens' comments about her in his book are very appropriate. Traditionally, virtue was not defined by these Christian thoughts, but they were virtue. Classical virtue were things like honesty, sincerity, courage, fortitude. That was virtuous. It wasn't the things that the Christians call virtue. I've got to say that up until the invention of Islam, Christianity was the worst thing that ever happened to the world. It's been a corrupt disease for the last 2,000 years. Although I've got to say this, it's mutated many times over the past. So the Christianity that, well, actually, okay, this is a separate conversation we can have. Was who was Jesus of Nazareth, and what did he believe, and why was he there, and what did he say? I'm not necessarily anti-Jesus at all. There's a lot of wisdom in what he says, but what developed out of that is a different question entirely. But let's go back to this. It's funny. If you believe in the Christian idea of virtue and charity being the main virtue, then you tend to then accept Christian ideas of vices, like the 7 deadly sins, okay? Can anybody name the 7 deadly sins off the top of their mind? Gluttony, that's one. Sloth, lust, avarice, those are all true. Anger, pride, and one more. Envy. This is a very erudite crowd that we have here. That's gratifying. But if you analyze those, you'll find that most of them are not actually vices as such as they're as much as bad habits, which is different from a vice. And we can look at those individually, but we're not going to talk about those things. We're talking about charity. What I'm trying to say is that this idea that you have about charity as being a good thing is part of the whole package deal, a Randian term, some of you will recognize, that has insinuated itself into Western society and is part of the corruption of it. So, what is charity? Well, the word comes from caritas in Latin, which means love. Interesting side observation. The Greeks and the Romans, we only have love. That's a word we use all the time. Love, love. And what's down from love? Like? I mean, we don't have, it's very funny. And I think I might attribute this to this Christian influence. There was, you had caritas, but then you had eros, which was romantic love, and philos, which was kind of philosophical love, and there are other terms for love too. We only have the one. And the whole thing about love, caritas, charity, and it's being recognized as a virtue, and I'm telling you it's actually a vice, a deadly vice, is look what they say, love your enemies as yourself. Nobody even challenges that. Yeah, that's wise, that's a good idea. If we all loved each other, then we wouldn't have wars and fights. Yeah, okay, let's all get together and love each other. This is total bullshit. Let me tell you why. I don't believe in hate, incidentally. Just because I don't believe in charity doesn't mean that I believe in its opposite. What I'm saying is that, look at these people that say, love your enemies. What does that mean? It means you're giving away a very valuable thing, your love, unearned, to somebody that doesn't deserve it. How intelligent is that, to give away a valuable thing to somebody that A, hasn't earned it, and B, doesn't even deserve it? I mean, this is insane. This is an insane moral system, and it infuses all of society and has helped to corrupt it. Anyway, love shouldn't be a free good, nor should charity coming off of it be free. This is all part of religion, of course. getting mingled up with philosophy. This is another one of the terrible bequests of Christianity. It used to be in the ancient world, religion was one thing. It was giving cult to the gods. And philosophy, about how you should live your life and what was right and what was wrong, these were two separate things. They had no relationship at all with each other. And Christianity took them and fused them, which meant that it was no longer really, philosophy wasn't really something that you discussed with people, because it was now something that was handed down by the man in the sky, whoever he might be, that was writing in that back corner all the things that he said that he was whispering in his ear. That's why Islam is even worse than Christianity, incidentally. But so subjects of morality went from being things that men would talk and discuss and with each other and try to come to intelligent conclusions, to obeying the dictates that were written down by some sky god. So religion should never be mixed with philosophy, and this is another way where the ancient world was much superior to our world. Not superior in all ways, but certainly in some ways. Well, okay, I just wanted to kind of lay the basics on this. So what's wrong with charity? What's wrong with it? And why shouldn't you engage in it? And why shouldn't you let other people make you feel guilty about charity? Well, I'll give you a few miscellaneous thoughts on this. One of them is that it takes from the producer of wealth, which is, at least not at the present moment, not an unlimited supply in the world, and gives to consumers. Another piece of corruption that relates to all this that you see in Western society. You always hear about, and I'm a friend of the consumer, and this is going to help consumers. Where everybody's a consumer. Well, what the hell is a consumer? A consumer he's not a producer, he's a useless mouth that consumes. I mean, this is another despicable inversion. So anyway, when you're charitable, what you're doing is you're taking capital, directly or indirectly, from the producer that created it, and you're giving it to somebody that didn't, and arguably can't. Now, I know there's all kinds of reasons why somebody can't support themselves, or can't do this, or can't do that. Yeah, I understand these things. Hard luck exists. It does. Lightning strikes, buses jump off the curb and, break your legs, and a dread disease can attack your body. Bad things happen, okay? I admit that. And I like to help my friends, the ones that deserve it, that have bad luck. It's not a problem. I think that's a good thing to do personally. But most of the time, the recipients of charity are not at the wrong end of bad luck. Mostly, if you're in a position that you need charity, it's because of one or two reasons. It's because of stupidity or bad habits. Most of the recipients of charity suffer from one of those two things. Now, stupidity. How about those people in Zimbabwe, okay? I mean, they've been grubbing for roots and berries and eating dirt for the last 10 years approximately. Shouldn't we help them? Well, it's another story. I actually have tried to help them in an intelligent way, and that's a whole different speech. But frankly, I don't have that much sympathy for them, to tell you the truth. Why not? It's not my fault that they've got a criminally insane person running their country, making things that way. They actually democratically elected him, and they've been complicit in him staying in office. This is true of every damn country in the world. They're not all as bad as Zimbabwe or Venezuela, but it's a sliding scale, okay? And nothing on that scale is really very good. So I'd say that if you need charity because you live in Zimbabwe, it's because your society is stupid, okay? And how much sympathy should you have for stupid people? Let me give you one of my definitions of stupidity, which is not often used, but it's relevant here. It's an unwitting tendency to self-destruction. That's what stupidity is. It's an unwitting tendency to self-destruction. So, when somebody is stupid, obviously they want to destroy themselves. Why should they be a recipient of my time and wealth and good efforts to keep them from doing what they want to do? And frankly, probably should do. You know, we all got to die sometime. I actually happen to believe that Ray Kurzweil is right. And if we can survive 20 more years, you might be able to live forever. So maybe you don't have to die sometime. But within present parameters, you do. And I don't think we should drag out the agony for some people. No point in keeping them alive longer than they should be. I mean, frankly, there's a lot of people right now, I think we'd be better off if they were dead now. In fact, I'll go further. I think there are some people that actually need killing. That doesn't mean that I'm going to kill anybody. I don't believe in aggressive action against other people. You know, I've never killed anybody. Don't plan on it at any time in the future. But I'm just saying, that's one thing about stupidity. You've got collective stupidity, which counts for countries like Zimbabwe, Venezuela, many others. And you've got personal stupidity. I think it can be cured. I think stupidity is not necessarily a terminal disease. It can be cured. But if you're stupid, you know, it's something that you're in control of. I can't make you not stupid. You're the only one that can make you not stupid. It's not a reason for charity. The other thing is bad habits, okay? Being lazy, being uneducated because you just don't learn stuff, doing criminal things and so forth. This is all these people that are recipients of charities, one of three things. Bad luck, okay, understand. One-time thing, great. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Bad habits or stupidity, not reasons for charity. Okay. So, the whole concept of charity in itself, the philosophical concept, subsidizes consumers, useless mouths, people that suffer from these bad habits and stupidity. And it dissipates capital, which producers, which should be using that capital to produce more capital and raise the whole boat for the whole world, including the stupid and the inept and the worthless. I mean, hey, we're all on the same boat, kind of, so okay, they get a free ride. All right, that's fine. But if you really want to help these miserable people, you don't do it by being charitable and giving them shit. The way you do it is by producing more wealth so that the whole boat rises, and yeah, they can hold on to the gutter rail and rise up with everybody else. And if they're a little bit smarter or have better ethics, hey, they can pull themselves up onto the boat. I'll give them a hand if it looks like they want to do that. But most of them don't, so forget about that. So, why is charity so popular, other than the fact that people think it's a moral good, which I've tried to explain it isn't? Well, from the consumer's point of view, the recipient's point of view, I've explained why they need it and why they want it, because they're stupid or because they have bad habits or sometimes just bad luck. But how about the people that give money, that are on the other side of this equation. What's in it for people to donate, any amount of money? $1, $1 billion, anything in between? There's probably two reasons, main reasons. One, it's prestige. Doesn't seem like a very charitable reason, loving your fellow man. Incidentally, should you love your fellow man? Because remember, love, charity, caritas, translates as love. So should you love your fellow man? Well, I don't know. To me, that's an open question. I'll tell you how I feel about it, and you can see if this makes any sense to you. I think that people in general, look, I like dogs. I like all animals. I like horses. I like fish. I like birds. I really do like life forms, personally. I really do. I'm very sympathetic towards them. Of all life forms, I may be least sympathetic towards my fellow chimpanzees because I can see their vices much more clearly. Because they have more intelligence, you presume they'd have more control over their actual vices. And should you love your fellow man? Well, I don't know. It's an open question. I'm not sure of that at all. To make it a moral dictate, I think, is a huge mistake. As I said before, love is not a free good. It should be earned. Therefore, it should be dispensed to people that you know personally, you approve of, that have earned your love. That's who should get it. You give it to everybody, you know what? You cheapen it. And your love becomes pretty diluted and worthless. It's like any other good. It's an economic good, quite frankly. Oh, anyway, let's going back to this. So these people that do massive charities, Carnegie and Ford and all these people, they do it basically for prestige. I don't think it's because they're philanthropists, i.e. somebody that loves other men. Not really. They're corrupting other men by giving them something free. Something magically appears. It's like it's turning the people that are getting this free good into like equivalents of South Sea Island cargo cults, where magic occurs and you don't have to do anything for it. It just comes and it happens to you. So I think it's actually quite corrupting to do that. So they're not philanthropists. That's a misnomer. They're actually prestige seekers. And I don't know. I don't think that's a particularly good thing. It's a natural thing, and I can understand it, and it can be beneficial to you and your personal survival to have lots of prestige. I understand all that. So it's not bad to be a prestige seeker, but I hate to see it disguised as something else. That's one reason that people engage in charity. It's not because they love their fellow man. And the other thing is to assuage guilt. In other words, they've done bad things in the past to specific other people or groups. And they think, well, to assuage that, I'll give this nebulous amount of money to all these people out there, whether they deserve it or not, to make myself feel better about myself. Well, this seems to me a rather ignoble way of engaging in charity, if you're going to engage in charity. So I think the whole house that charity is built out of is rotten and termite eaten. So what are the effects of charity? Let's look at that. Well, it dissipates the capital pool. If Bill Gates gives $1 billion to some ridiculous venture he might be engaging in, what does that mean? That's $1 billion that was in one pool under the command of somebody who's competent in creating more capital that is now frittered away to the winds and has no value that way, no use. It's gone. It's dissipated. So I think that the effect is very bad. And a worse effect, though, it's not just that. It's that looking at it from the recipient's point of view, it gives the recipients bad ideas of where wealth comes from, and it acts to actually cement them to the bottom of society. You can look at welfare as being charity, state charity, if you will. I mean, a mutated, corrupt form, but still, it's charity. We want to help the poor. We want, you heard of these bullshit arguments. But actually, as you well know, it does the opposite of what they say. It cements them to the bottom. It destroys their families. The first speaker was talking about some of the things that giving free money to the people has done. That's why the black family is in such dire straits today. It's because of these charity types that happen to work for the state and therefore use the state to do that. So, dissipates capital, so you can't improve the general state of humanity, cements the recipients to the bottom, and I'll tell you another thing it does. It naturally attracts parasites, freeloaders. Hey, free stuff. I'm going to drop whatever I'm doing or had to do to, support myself, and I'm going to go and grab that free stuff. Well, it's a natural thing. I mean, everybody does it. But it's a bad habit. And the people that are most attracted, and then glom onto it, it attracts parasites. So my feeling is the people that work in charity industries or NGOs, there's a plague of those things in the world. There's thousands of them. These are the poorest and worst type of people. They like to think of themselves as the best and the brightest. They're the poorest and the worst type of people. I've seen them in Africa. They're driving around in their $80,000 Land Rovers with their clipboards, figuring out ways to help the natives. This is typical. These are the type of people that charity attracts. You go to a charity ball where you pay $1,000 a plate to help the poor. And, so after everybody in the entertainment and all that, so out of the $1,000, $500 a plate isn't hard expenses. And then you got the extravagant offices and the president of the charity on $1 million salary. I think the president of the Red Cross probably earns about $5 million a year, maybe more, who knows. So after all that, maybe a couple of percent. Well, that's probably the good news. Only a couple of percent trickles down to corrupt the poor. So I always look at the bright side. So it's all a scam. And what's the worst kind of charity? Actually, the further you get from, the greater the distance between the giver and the receiver, inevitably, the more corrupt the result and the more disastrous the result. So what is the worst kind of charity today? It's international charity. Because there's no relationship whatsoever between the giver and the receiver. In fact, all international charity today is a transfer scam, scam, taking money from poor people in rich countries and giving it to rich people in poor countries. So all this international, let's help the poor starving Africans, it's a swindle. Well, what about food? Aren't these people starving? Shouldn't we feed the hungry? Well, actually, no. Because I'll tell you what happens to the food, most of it. First of all, when it arrives, most of it's stolen, okay? They get a hold of it, and the local warlord or whoever gets as much as he can and sells it. Gets it at zero cost. Hey, that's pretty cheap. And he sells it to the people for something, whatever he can get for it. So most of it's stolen, number one. But that's not the worst part of it. I can understand simple theft. The worst part of it is that when, whatever country is popular to be starving at that time, they get the food shipments in massive quantities. And what happens in the marketplace? All that food, one way or another, gets dumped on the market. And now the prices of food, which might have been relatively high, that's why people are starving, they can't afford the food, now the price of food collapses. Okay, what about the farmers that were growing the food before? They were having a hard time making it at high prices. Now prices are approaching zero, so the farmers are put out of business. They start starving, and they move into the cities. Then you got nobody producing food in the godforsaken country, and more people in the cities, and they got a bigger disaster. We got to send them more food. So it's self-perpetuating. So I've got to say, sending food to feed the hungry is totally counterproductive. Well, wait, okay, I can understand. How about medical care? I mean, how can you have somebody that's sick and not, well, look, I'm talking on an international charity basis, certainly. And frankly, this doesn't help these countries. All it does is keeps them alive for another cycle, and they reproduce. And now in the next generation, you got 5 times as many people which have exactly the same problems for exactly the same reasons, except that now it's a 5 times bigger problem. So I think it's disastrous and stupid. Yes, I know, it helps the donor assuage his guilt and feel like a good guy and get prestige and press and all that. Okay, that's wonderful.
And tax deductions.
Well, and tax deductions, of course. I mean, it's helpful. I'm sure that's another method of, there's got to be ways to do scams so you give $1 and get back $1.50, actually. So what should you do if you want to be charitable? Well, here's what I do. If I've got excess capital and I feel somebody's, in a jackpot for some reason, and it happens to all of us, then, I'll give them what I can, what they need, okay? But there's some advantages to this. I've made an individual choice to help that individual person because I think they're worthy. Good moral character, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not just pissing away the money into the void. But there's another reason. It's I can watch what they do and how they handle it. And it's educational for me. And it's kind of a little moral intelligence test for them. And I know if they blew it the first time, you know what? There's 7 billion fucking people in the world. Why do I want to make the same mistake a second time? I made plenty of mistakes a second and a third time. But, when I'm giving money away, I don't need to do that. I'm old enough to figure out a few things anyway. So I can learn something about somebody else's character and improve my own judgment. So if you want to do charity, make it one-to-one. Ideally with some conditions for the person. Because if the person's gotten, if it's an accident, it depends. It's a judgment thing, which is another problem with charity. People don't use their judgment about charity. They just open their wallets because they've been told it's a good idea. All right, so that's how I do charity, okay? It's not that I don't believe in helping other people. I do. I think I've explained the nature of this thing. So what should you do in general if you want to be charitable and improve the state of humanity, whether they deserve it or not? It's the first thing you should do is deny capital to the state. Do anything you can to keep it out of the hands of the state. So if you really want to be charitable, help your fellow man, be a philanthropist, that's what you do first, okay? That's a pretty easy one. Most people don't think about that. You got these morons like, who are they? Who's that guy? Ted Turner. And there were a bunch of these billionaires that actually gave $1 billion to the United Nations. The situation is hopeless. It really is. Second thing you should do is, so what do you do with the money? Well, don't give the money to the poor and the bedraggled and the homeless. And, what you want to do is you want to help the able get more able, not just prolong the agony of people that are dead ducks anyway, quite frankly. I mean, that's just a fact. You want to help people, that's what you do. It's triage. In a battlefield situation, you divide people into 3 groups. You got the people, they're going to die, you can't help them. Okay, over here. You got the people that, need help, but but it's going to take a little longer. And then you got the people that you can patch them up and they can be further helped. That's what you got to do. But charity gives it to the wrong people. It's counterproductive. Okay, so all I'm saying is give money to the producers, not the useless mouths. And the third thing, this is all about take personal responsibility for this. And one of the big problems with charity is that I'll write a check, and now I've solved that problem, and now I don't have any personal responsibility for it all. I'm saying, blow that out of your mind and take personal responsibility. And maybe it's not a bad idea. Like, various religions say give tithe 10%, but take very personal, person to person is what I mean, responsibility for where it goes and what happens to it. And better, don't even give it to somebody. Tell them, look, I know you're in trouble. I know you'd help me if I was in trouble. But I don't expect it back. But if you're in a position to, give it back. Little character test. I don't tell them it's a character test, but, you know. So those are my 3 rules of charity. And anyway, I'd like to see the current paradigm of charity totally debunked and overthrown and eliminated. So I don't know. Have I used my time?
You still have time.
So Doug, I agree with almost everything you said. And the place that I think requires some challenges on the implications that all charities are bad and accept one-on-one relationships. So the individualization of your choice, the setting of standards that you're looking for from those donations, I think are completely valid, but they sometimes get missed in how you apply your philosophy in day-to-day life. And if you take a look at anything you try to accomplish, whether it's in business, in your personal life, or whatever, there will be things you're really, really good at and things that you're not. And so charitable organizations, whether it's an individual running it that you believe has organizational ability to accomplish something you'd like to see accomplished, or that they have the ability to round up other people who have that ability by refusing to acknowledge that that is a valid thing to support, not only affects, sometimes it actually backfires. So I'll give you a couple of quick examples if I may. First of all, education. Some examples are young people coming out from under the Iron Curtain, or out from some of those countries where they are poor and uneducated through no fault of their own. Their minds are still free, but they have no access to the information. So education can take many forms there in terms of distributing books or having liberty camps or whatever it may happen to be, entrepreneurship, and healing. You did talk about, some people just have it down and out, but a lot of people have their own motivations for why they donate to a particular charity because they've experienced some charity themselves, or their family has. A third one could be immigrants, which kind of goes back to that. A lot of people give back through charity, volunteering their time, setting up charitable organizations because they're grateful that they were accepted without having to pay money to come to a free country and to become productive.
Okay, no, those are good points, Mary Lou. And I recognize, there's some validity to what you say, but, it's a slippery slope. And you set up an organization, and you know what happens? As in all things in life, the second law of thermodynamics rules everything. And what does that mean? It's entropy. It's the natural tendency of things to wind down and become corrupt. And so you can set something up that would help one of these things in the purest and most efficient and direct, and I guarantee you, in a few years, for any number of reasons, it's going to become a self-perpetuating boondoggle.
Which is fine though, because your contribution to it through volunteerism or through paying other people to do what you don't have time or talent
Yeah,
to do.
I know.
But see, it's all conditional.
I understand, and I don't disagree with your intentions. I'm just saying, beware, it's a slippery slope. And I will make one comment on one other thing you said. It's this whole idea of giving back. This is another concept that everybody accepts. Well, I feel like I've got to give back. Hey, wait a minute. The only reason I'm in a position is because I did something. You know, it's like that idiot Barack Obama. You didn't make this, there's somebody else that gave it. You don't have to give anything back to anything. I mean, it's a wrong concept. To help others creative. Anyway, that's another kettle of worms.
Yeah, okay, so we can debate more afterwards, but I have a couple more points of
All right, those are good points.
Thank you. We'll continue the question and answers, but those people who are starving can actually slowly go out to get some food. But we will continue Q&A with you, Doug, if that's okay with you.
Oh, that's okay. Are we too far over time, though?
Well, lunch has started, but people can bring their lunch and we can continue talking there.
Oh, okay. Anyway, nobody ever talks about the subject, so I thought I'd bring up something that is reasonably controversial and most people just never address.
Hey, Doug.
That's all I'm trying to say.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
It's more of a comment, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. My name is Phil, by the way. The point you made about the distance between the giver and the givee kind of allows for a greater deal of corruption. It made me think about the First Nations people here in Canada, because they're based on reserves. They're very much separated, or at least a lot of them are, from society, and yet they receive enormous amounts of money for reparations and for historical grievances, and yet what condition is that community in? Just a very brief anecdote. I used to work for a video production company. We had a cameraman go out to a reserve. We were making a video to promote a dental center because health standards there were just awful. I saw footage of kids that apparently was all too uncommon, around 10 years old, 11 years old, their permanent teeth have rotted completely. These were kids, sorry. They haven't reached their preteens and they're going to need dentures. So basically the point I wanted to make is that, it's to me it's like, it's not a First Nation, it's a charity nation. There are these extreme leftists here in Vancouver, for example, who will organize protests. They'll align themselves with First Nations leaders and they'll embolden their desire and their convictions around deserving more money, and it's like those people are their greatest enemies. Those people that teach them that they deserve more and more.
Oh yeah, no, you're totally right. You're totally right. I mean, it's absolutely shameful what the Canadian and the U.S. governments, because the U.S. is just as bad, maybe worse for all I know, than the Canadians are at corrupting and destroying native cultures. And it's also the most, in the U.S., the Bureau of Indian Affairs is notoriously the most corrupt of all agencies, where everybody expects to retire as a multimillionaire that works for it, very covertly, of course. No, it's horrible, it's criminal. But it's all supposed to be being charitable to these people, that paying back the bad things we did to them in the past by doing worse things to them in the present.
Doug, you may recall you and I having this conversation on the phone some years ago when you were criticizing my own philanthropic ambitions. And you summarized it very succinctly then. You said that it was a sin to breed a culture of dependency. And it was probably improper to view as a donor philanthropy in any way other than as a consumer good. That money that was given as a consequence of guilt would have been better applied achieving for mankind. The thing that interests me about your position, well, I guess I have two things to say, and I think maybe you dealt with one of them in terms of the one-on-one. because you've been extremely generous to me over time, with no expectation of recompense. You'll recall that when you and I met, I couldn't spell libertarian, and I had no interest in social causes. And you sort of chuckled, you and John Bugsley sort of chuckled, and you didn't in fact give me the information. I don't know if you remember this, but you made me read economics in one lesson, and then you made me read, God, what's the other one?
Maybe Virtue of Selfishness.
No, not Virtue of Selfishness.
Market for Liberty, maybe.
Market for Liberty, exactly. In fact, you brought me along sort of step by step by step, with no sense of recompense to you. You also have been very active in Cycle, contributing your time, talent, and whether you admit it or not, probably a fair bit of money to educate kids in Eastern Europe with no expectation of recompense. I think I get where you're going with that in terms of the one-on-one. How would you characterize your giving money to Harry Brown's campaign and inducing me to give money to Harry Brown's campaign? Was that a situation where you were paying Harry Brown to engage in propaganda in our behalf? Or was that philanthropy?
That's a good question. I actually gave Harry a lot of money when he was running for president. And you're right. It's first of all, Harry wanted it, and I felt like I owed Harry something. So that was fine.
Guilt, okay.
Yeah, a little guilt, yeah. And, you know, also was, I felt, you know, I'm willing to pay for some propaganda. It was that. Yeah.
So tomorrow when you're up to speed.
And I had too much change burning a hole in my pocket at that particular time. So foolishness.
Personally, thank you for your charity on my behalf.
Hey, thanks for that.
Hey, your comments, am I on or off? It's on. It's on, okay. I initially was remembering the sign I have on the wall of my office back home. Reads, "Never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups." And your comment that toward the end here about entropy reminded me of a comic strip that I've always liked. It was two dogs that had kind of a lot of social commentary. This one dog is explaining to the other what entropy is about. And he says, entropy is the process by which systems of total order invariably collapse into complete disorder. And the other dog says, it's nice to be on the winning side. I've often wondered, this goes back to a lot of the reading I did of Ayn Rand from 50 to 60 years ago, I guess. And she was a very important influence on me, not because I ended up being an objectivist, which I did not, but because she kind of forced you to examine specifics of her. I mean, she was in pretty good control of her language, and you couldn't sneak something by without focusing on it. And I've often wondered if her idea, in terms of objectivism, the idea that there are objective values and objective truths, that this is really the source of so much of our difficulty, not just in terms of politics, in terms of religion, in terms of epistemology, and so on. It goes back long before Rand. And it strikes me that it is premised on the idea that there are objective standards of truth. There are objective standards of morality, an objective standard, and that I happen to know what those objective standards are. And if I see you behaving in a way that's contrary to those objective standards, I'm going to assume that you are self-sacrificing in some way. That not recognizing that everything we know, everything we believe, all of our values, they're subjective in nature. I wish we could avoid that. I wasn't around when the species came into existence, but, well, actually I was, but in a different form. But it just strikes me that we spend so much time operating on the assumption that what I know and believe is objectively true what you know and believe is a whim or something of that nature. And it's just like, Rand preferred rock bottom awful or stockhouse. Okay, that's fine. I do too. But that's sort of became a way in which her subjective preferences became the standard of objective truth. And I think we just haven't gotten over that one.
Yeah, I think you're right, Butler. I agree. I'm a freedom fighter. You're a rebel. He's a terrorist.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm uncertain about the answers to a lot of these questions. Like,
The terrorist is the man with the homemade bomb.
yeah, well, we can create lots of definitions for them. Well, anybody else got any thoughts?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, this point was made to me, I think by Porter Stansbury, though you might have mentioned it at some point, but trying to help a relative with your charity, with your own funds, is surprisingly difficult. And this point was driven home to me when my father made a large gift to my half-brother. And he's too old to manage the thing, and I'm in charge of dealing with the whole thing. And just my brother looking me in the face and just ignoring everything I'm telling him about the importance of saving the money rather than splurging it, which he was doing. And him just sort of listening to me just vapidly, and then throwing out another argument why he, needs to do this, that, and the other. Just that humiliation that he was subjected to. Really, that's a very powerful argument for me.
Any other questions?
great.
I actually have.
Oh,
I'm curious to know what your issues are with people like Gates who have their own money and who want to cure disease. I think he's curing typhoid.
Yeah. No,
it's 99% eradicated. Maybe it's ego. I'm not sure how much it matters why when the end result is a good thing.
well, I don't know.
And it's his own money.
No, it's his own money. He can do absolutely anything he wants with that money. I'm just saying, if he really wanted to prove that he was a philanthropist and loved humanity, the best thing that he could do for it would be to increase the amount of wealth in the world so that all these bottom-of-the-barrel people, their level will be raised generally with all ships rise.
Right, which kind of brings me to...
I mean, he can do what he wants. I just think that it's not wise.
So my second last question is, so you then do not have a problem with people or charities, I don't mean government-run charities, but just people who are charitable, who want to assist and give people a leg up to make them more productive, or to a situation where not to make them.
But Bryce, I covered that. I said, it makes people believe in the cargo cult, that manna comes from heaven and things like that. As a general rule, I think it's the wrong way to do things.
What about like microloans and things that Rick's...
That's different. I mean, you're not destroying the capital because it's coming back with interest, and it's controlled. So microloans are a different thing. But Gates giving 10 million mosquito nets to Africans so they don't get malaria. Oh, as a practical matter, how did that work out? None of them are used, and they're cut up and used as strainers and
in his case, that's almost completely cleaned out.
Yeah, I know.
It's
It'll come.
99.9%.
I know, but
and I don't know. That sounds like a good thing
I don't know.
to do with your own money.
Well, if you want to do that with your own money, but on the other hand, I mean, I'm trying to look at the indirect and delayed consequences of it. These parts of the world have malaria, not just because the disease is endemic to some parts of the world, it's a natural thing, but because the local people have all kinds of bad habits and do stupid things. And now you're going to double their population because you're taking away the predator. It's like taking wolves out of Yellowstone Park and the deer population explodes. It's the
So would you
same
have an
thing.
issue with someone trying to cure cancer with their own money, certain kind of cancer or types, and just to make the
It's okay.
increasing our longevity by eliminating breast cancer?
I know. It's their money. They can do really whatever they want with it. I'm just saying it would be better to create a lot more capital, and then curing cancer, instead of being a major thing, would be just a natural consequence of a wealthy society. So, that's all I'm saying. Okay, guys, thank you very much.